Australians have had enough. Not a little bit annoyed, not mildly frustrated, not temporarily disappointed. No, people across the country seem to have reached that point where patience runs out and common sense starts demanding answers. The mood is changing fast, and it is changing because too many people feel like they were promised one thing and handed the complete opposite. Before the election, Anthony Albanese and his government gave the impression that migration pressures would be brought under control. There was an understanding that borders would be managed responsibly, numbers would be moderated, and the strain being felt in housing, roads, public services and daily life.
Everybody here almost came to have a free life, to have good with their kids, do better for themselves, get ahead. And this is how we get repaid. This is how we are viewed. We are victimized. You know, we're constantly picked on, the whole community, and we get no leeway. And everything, you know, Ellie Schlanger is a dear friend of mine, was a dear friend of mine.
Young rabbi murdered.
Everybody loved Ellie, and Ellie loved everybody. And he wrote a letter to the Prime Minister 10 days ago, which I was privileged enough to see, to ask him to please consider the decision of him and Penny Wong recognising the Palestinian state. And what did we get? We didn't even get a response. Please, Barnaby, do something.
Do something about
that is the whole reason that Pauline and I are here is we are going to do.
Before we continue, do us a little favour by subscribing to the channel, because over 98% of you watching haven't subscribed. It costs you nothing, not even a penny, to join this channel. Have you subscribed? Thanks so much.
That message resonated with voters because it reflected reality. Australians were already seeing the cracks. They knew population growth without planning creates chaos. They knew the cost of living crisis would only get worse if demand kept rising while supply stayed stagnant. Yet here we are. Instead of seeing a sensible reduction in migration levels, many Australians feel like they've watched the issue spiral even further out of control. Housing has become one of the clearest examples of government failure. Families are struggling to buy. Young people are wondering if home ownership is now a fantasy. Renters are competing in crowded inspections, offering more money just to secure a roof over their heads. And while ordinary people are being told to tighten their belts, the pressure on housing demand keeps increasing. This is where public anger starts becoming political danger.
Yeah, look, it's terrible, and we're seeing the erosion of basic rights in this country, including people's property rights. It should be a basic right for people not to have people come on and invade their land, and particularly egregious here has been the situation where in Victoria landowners have had their rights of appeal, their rights to object to these transmission lines taken away in the Labor Party's desperate attempt to try and resuscitate their failing net zero agenda. All of this stuff is failing, the economics are falling over, the investment is drying up, and the Labor Party is so desperate now not to admit failure that they're willing to throw billions of dollars of taxpayers' dollars at this, and also to trample on people's basic human rights. We're with the farmers on this. We always have been. We're against this stuff. That's why we'll also scrap net zero. We'll get rid of all this rubbish. And let's just be more sensible about how we approach our farmers, but protect them. I've been in the farming food bowl of our nation, the Murray-Darling, the last week or so, camping out there, and they just get too much crap put on them, our nation's farmers. It's time we give back to them and support them.
Because Australians are not blind. They can connect the dots. They understand that when you rapidly increase population numbers without building enough homes, schools, hospitals, transport links and basic infrastructure, the result is exactly what we're seeing now. Overcrowding, rising prices, longer wait times, packed roads, stretched communities, and a feeling that quality of life is slipping away. What makes people even angrier is the sense that this was avoidable. Nobody is saying migration has no place in Australia. That would be dishonest and simplistic. Australia has benefited from migration for generations. Skilled workers, entrepreneurs, families, and people seeking a better future have all helped shape the country. But the key word is management. Controlled migration that matches housing supply, labour needs and national capacity is one thing. Reckless numbers during a housing shortage and inflation crisis is another entirely. That distinction matters, and voters know it. The problem for Albanese is not just policy, it is trust. When leaders say one thing before an election and do another once in office, people remember. They may not quote speeches word for word, but they remember how they felt. They remember the promise. They remember being told things would improve, and when life becomes harder instead, resentment grows. This is why comments suggesting Australians have had a gutful ring true to so many people. It captures the national mood. There is fatigue with excuses, fatigue with spin, fatigue with governments pretending obvious problems are somehow complicated mysteries nobody could have predicted. Australians are practical people. They don't demand perfection. They know.
Young couples delay having children because they can't afford space. Students can't find rentals. Workers spend more time commuting because cities are congested. Regional towns suddenly face shortages and pressure because planning never kept up. These are not abstract statistics. These are real consequences felt in kitchens, cars, workplaces and family budgets. And when government appears disconnected from those realities, voters start looking elsewhere. That should deeply worry Labor. Because this issue cuts across traditional political lines. It is not just Conservatives asking questions. Plenty of working class Labor voters are frustrated too. Plenty of migrants who came through a fair and orderly system are frustrated. Plenty of younger voters who simply want a chance at stable housing are frustrated. This is broader than party politics now. It is about whether the country is being managed responsibly. The Albanese government seems to have underestimated how emotional the housing and migration link has become. People may tolerate many things, but they do not tolerate feeling locked out of their own future. Once young Australians believe they can't own homes, can't get ahead, and can't rely on promises, anger hardens quickly. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Governments often love headline population growth because it can make economic numbers look healthier. More people can mean more consumption, more tax revenue, more activity. But if that growth leaves citizens poorer, more stressed, and unable to find housing, then what exactly is the success story? GDP figures don't comfort someone whose rent jumped again. Population growth means little to a nurse stuck in traffic for 2 hours. Economic spin doesn't help a graduate forced back into their childhood bedroom because rent is unaffordable. That is where the political class often loses touch. Australians want a country that grows smartly, not chaotically. They want compassion balanced with realism. They want opportunity without sacrificing livability. They want leaders who prioritise citizens instead of protecting bad decisions with endless public relations language. And if the current government cannot grasp that, the backlash may only intensify. Because once voters conclude that promises are disposable, they become ruthless at election time. They stop listening to speeches. They stop trusting announcements. They start voting with frustration. That is the storm any government should fear. Anthony Albanese still has time to change course, but time is not unlimited. Confidence, once lost, is difficult to win back. Australians are asking for stronger borders, sensible migration settings, more housing supply, and leadership willing to acknowledge reality rather than dodge it. Those are not radical demands. They are mainstream expectations. So when people say Australians have had enough, don't dismiss it as political theatre. It reflects something real happening in suburbs, towns and cities across the country. A growing sense that promises were broken, pressures were ignored, and ordinary people were expected to simply accept it. That may have worked for a while, but not anymore. What do you think? Have Australians truly had enough of broken promises on migration and housing? Or is the anger being overstated? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit like if you believe leaders should be held accountable, and subscribe for more bold political coverage that says what others want.